You are. Stop chasing clarity from people who only respond to pressure. That is the first mistake. When you match a man's distance, you are not withdrawing love. You are. You are withdrawing illusion. You are stepping out of fantasy and into reality, and reality is where character is revealed. Distance does not create loss. You are. It exposes priorities. And what is exposed was always there. A man reacts to match distance the way he reacts to truth. Either he steps forward with intention, you are, or he retreats into comfort. There is no third option. When effort is no longer subsidized by your availability, he must decide whether to rise or disappear. You are. This is not cruelty. This is alignment. You are no longer compensating for his inconsistency with your emotional labor. You are simply standing where you belong. You are. People believe attraction is built through reassurance, explanation, and endless emotional availability. That belief is wrong. Attraction is built through coherence. You are. When words, actions, and boundaries move in the same direction. When you match distance, you are saying, without drama, you are. I meet people where they meet me. That sentence alone filters chaos from your life. Men do not respect what costs them nothing. That is not cynicism, you are, it is psychology. When a man senses that access to you is automatic, he relaxes into passivity. But when he feels that connection requires presence, consistency, you are, an effort, something ancient wakes up in him. Responsibility sharpens attention. Challenge organizes desire. Matching distance does not mean playing games. You are. Games are chaotic. This is disciplined. You are not pulling away to provoke pursuit. You are pulling back to maintain self-respect. You are. You are refusing to overextend where reciprocity is absent. That is not strategy. It is integrity. Watch closely what happens next. You are. A grounded man will feel the absence and move forward with clarity. He will ask, initiate, and re-engage with purpose. A confused man will drift, hesitate, or vanish. You are. Both outcomes are wins because both deliver truth. And truth, though uncomfortable, is stabilizing. You are. Most people are exhausted because they are trying to be chosen instead of choosing themselves. They negotiate their worth through patience, silence, you are, and tolerance of neglect. That path leads only to resentment. When you match distance, you end the negotiation. You place value back where it belongs. You are. Inside your standards. There is power in restraint. There is strength in not explaining yourself to someone who has not earned explanation. Silence, you are, when grounded in self-respect, is not weakness. It is structure. It forces reality to speak instead of fantasy. You are. Men react strongly to this because it confronts them with consequence. Not punishment, consequence. If he wants closeness, he must create it. If he wants access, you are. He must show up. And if he does nothing, he has answered you more clearly than words ever could. Do not confuse emotional intensity with connection. Intensity is cheap. You are. Consistency is rare. When you match distance, you stop rewarding intensity and start requiring consistency. That shift alone elevates the entire dynamic. You are. Focus on your direction, not his reaction. When your life is ordered, when your time, energy, and attention are invested in purpose, you are. You become less reactive and more selective. That composure is deeply attractive, not because it is impressive, but because it is stable. You are. A man who is worthy will feel this stability and move toward it. A man who is not will feel exposed and retreat. Let him. Your task is not to manage his feelings. You are. Your task is to protect your standards. Matching distance is not about power over someone else. It is about power over yourself. You are. It is the refusal to abandon your values for temporary reassurance. It is choosing long-term respect over short-term validation. Stand firm. Match what is given. You are. Do not chase. Do not explain. Do not beg. Let behavior speak. Let silence clarify. Let consistency decide. When you do this, you are no longer asking to be chosen. You are revealing who deserves access. That is not dating advice. That is self-discipline. And self-discipline changes everything. Distance reveals truth. You are. People regulate effort to what they value. That single fact dismantles more illusions than 1,000 conversations ever could. When space enters a connection, you are. What remains is not confusion but clarity. Effort does not disappear randomly. It reallocates itself toward what matters. You are. And if someone reduces their presence when the situation requires intention, they are not overwhelmed. They are undecided. You are. Truth emerges not through words spoken in comfort, but through behavior maintained under restraint. Most people fear distance because it threatens fantasy. You are. Fantasy survives on constant contact, reassurance, and emotional noise. Reality does not. Reality is quiet, measurable, and often uncomfortable. You are. When you step back and match distance, you are not creating a problem, you are removing interference. You are. You stop cushioning someone from the consequences of their inconsistency. You stop overfunctioning in a dynamic that was never balanced. And the moment you do that, you are. Reality steps forward and shows you exactly where you stand. People who value you will feel distance as a call to action, not an excuse. They will not need persuasion. You are. They will not require emotional instruction manuals. They will move clearly, decisively, and with purpose. You are. That movement is not driven by fear of loss, but by recognition of value. Those who do not value you will hesitate, stall, rationalize, or disappear. You are. That too is information. Painful perhaps, but precise. The mistake most people make is assuming effort should be begged for, negotiated, or earned through endurance. You are. That belief erodes self-respect. Effort is not created through sacrifice, it is revealed through choice. When you keep giving in the absence of reciprocity, you are. You distort the data. You make it impossible to know what the other person would do without your constant input. Distance corrects that distortion. You are. Matching distance is not withdrawal fueled by resentment. It is alignment fueled by discipline. It is the decision to meet reality as it is, not as you wish it to be. You are. You are not punishing anyone. You are simply refusing to subsidize ambivalence with your energy, and that refusal changes everything. When effort must be intentional, you are. Character becomes visible. When access is no longer automatic, priorities surface. A person either steps into responsibility or retreats into convenience. You are. There is no moral judgment in this, only observation. An observation, when honest, is liberating. People often confuse emotional availability with virtue. You are. They believe that staying open at all costs makes them loving. In truth, indiscriminate openness breeds chaos. Love without structure collapses into anxiety. You are. Distance introduces structure. It forces both people to confront what they are actually willing to invest, not what they claim to feel. You are. Those who are grounded understand this instinctively. They do not chase what runs. They do not cling to what drifts. You are. They adjust their position until effort is mutual or the truth becomes undeniable. This is not coldness, it is maturity. Distance also reveals your own weaknesses. You are. It exposes where you seek validation instead of alignment. It shows you how quickly you abandon your standards to avoid discomfort. You are. That is why distance feels threatening. It demands self-confrontation. But on the other side of that confrontation is strength. When you stop filling the silence, you are. Silence starts speaking. When you stop initiating, initiation reveals itself, or its absence does. When you stop explaining your worth, you are. Worth becomes self-evident through boundaries. Distance removes noise. What remains is signal. You are. The disciplined individual understands that clarity is kinder than hope without evidence. They would rather face a hard truth than live in prolonged uncertainty. You are. Distance accelerates that process. It compresses time. It brings answers forward instead of dragging confusion out indefinitely. Do not fear what distance might reveal. You are. Fear what avoiding it costs you. Fear the years lost compensating for someone else's indecision. You are. Fear the slow erosion of self. Respect that comes from chronic overextension. Distance, when chosen consciously, is not abandonment, it is self-correction. You are. Effort follows value. Always has, always will. When you allow distance to exist, you are no longer guessing where you stand. You are measuring it. You are. And measurement is the beginning of wisdom. Stand still. Do not chase. Do not plead. Do not perform. Let distance do its work. Let effort reveal itself. You are. And when it does, accept the truth with courage. Because clarity once faced frees you to move forward, stronger, grounded. You are. And no longer confused about what you are worth. Matching energy is not manipulation. It is self-respect in action. Manipulation seeks control through deception. You are. Self-respect seeks alignment through truth. When you match what is given instead of overextending to compensate for what is missing, you are not playing games. You are. You are refusing to lie to yourself. You are choosing coherence between your standards and your behavior. You are. And that choice changes the entire structure of a relationship. People accuse restraint of being strategy because they are uncomfortable with boundaries. You are. They have learned to equate love with endurance, availability with virtue, and self-sacrifice with connection. You are. But there is nothing noble about abandoning your center to keep someone close. That is not love. That is fear wearing the costume of devotion. You are. Matching energy dismantles that illusion. It says calmly and without drama, I meet others where they meet me. Manipulation demands reaction. Self-respect does not. You are. When you stop initiating more than the other person, stop explaining yourself into exhaustion, stop offering reassurance that was never requested, you are. Something important happens. You become still. And in that stillness, truth surfaces. Those who value you will step forward. Those who do not will drift. You are. Neither outcome requires persuasion. Most unhealthy dynamics are powered by imbalance. One person gives, the other receives. One pursues, the other evaluates. You are. One explains, the other withholds. Matching energy corrects that imbalance. You are. It removes the hidden contract where you overfunction and then feel resentful when it is not reciprocated. You are. Resentment is the tax you pay for violating your own boundaries. Matching energy does not mean mirroring moodiness or passive aggression. It means matching investment. You are. It means aligning effort with effort, availability with availability, clarity with clarity. If someone shows up inconsistently, you do not punish them, you adjust. You are. Adjustment is not revenge, it is calibration. You are tuning your output to reality instead of fantasy. Men, in particular, respond not to words, but to consequence. You are. Not punishment, consequence. When energy is no longer unlimited, presence becomes intentional. When access is no longer guaranteed, effort becomes conscious. You are. This is not about making someone chase. It is about discovering whether they are willing to walk. Those who are serious will not feel manipulated by your self-respect. You are. They will feel relieved. Destruct creates safety. Boundaries clarify expectations. When you match energy, you are not withdrawing warmth. You are. You are requiring reciprocity. Healthy individuals recognize this as stability, not threat. People who accuse you of manipulation often benefit from your overachieving. You are. When you stop supplying emotional labor for free, they must confront their own lack of contribution. That confrontation is uncomfortable. You are. So they label your restraint as a tactic. Do not accept that framing. You are not responsible for managing someone else's discomfort with accountability. You are. Matching energy also protects you from self-betrayal. Every time you give more than you receive, you teach yourself that your needs are negotiable. Over time, you are. That lesson becomes identity. Self-respect reverses that process. It restores internal order. You are. You begin to trust yourself again because your actions reflect your values. There is a profound difference between openness and exposure. You are. Openness is offered selectively to those who demonstrate care. Exposure is giving everything to everyone and hoping it will be honored. You are. Matching energy keeps you open without being exposed. It allows connection without collapse. Do not confuse intensity with intimacy. You are. Intensity burns fast and leaves ash. Intimacy is built through mutual investment over time. You are. Matching energy filters out those who seek stimulation without responsibility. It makes room for those who can sustain presence without being chased. You are. When you stop doing more than your share, you stop confusing effort with worth. You are. You realize that being chosen is not about proving value, but about recognizing alignment. You do not need to be louder, softer, more patient, or more understanding. You are. You need to be accurate. Accuracy requires restraint. It requires the courage to pause, observe, and respond instead of react. You are. Matching energy is that pause made visible. It is you saying, through behavior, I respect myself enough to require balance. You are. Let go of the need to be perceived as kind at the cost of being respected. True kindness includes honesty, and honesty sometimes looks like stepping back. You are. When you do this, you are not manipulating outcomes. You are allowing reality to reveal them. Stand firm, match what is offered. Do not overextend. Do not chase. You are. Do not explain. Let effort meet effort. Let presence meet. That is not strategy. That is self-respect in motion. Men respond to boundaries more than words. You are. Consistency more than emotion. Words are easy. Emotion is loud. But boundaries require discipline and consistency requires character. When the two are present, you are. Behavior changes. When they are absent, no amount of explanation will compensate. This is not a statement about cruelty or coldness. You are. It is a statement about human psychology and responsibility. Most people try to talk their way into being valued. They explain their feelings, justify their needs. You are. And rehearse conversations in the hope that clarity will produce commitment. But commitment is not negotiated through emotion. It is elicited through structure. You are. Boundaries create structure. They define what is acceptable, what is sustainable, and what will not be tolerated. Without them, emotion becomes noise. Men, you are in particular, are trained by life to respond to consequence rather than sentiment. They learn through action, feedback, and result. When boundaries are clear, you are. They know where they stand. When boundaries are absent, they drift. Not because they are malicious, but because ambiguity invites passivity. You are. Consistency removes that ambiguity. A boundary is not a threat. It is not an ultimatum. It is not a punishment. It is a statement of self-governance. It says, you are. This is how I operate. When that statement is enforced calmly and repeatedly, it teaches others how to treat you. Words may ask for respect. You are, but boundaries require it. Emotion without consistency creates instability. One day you are available, the next you are overwhelmed. One moment you accept behavior, you are. The next you resent it. This unpredictability does not deepen attraction, it erodes trust. Consistency, on the other hand, creates safety. You are. It tells the other person that your standards are not negotiable based on mood or fear of loss. Men are not moved by emotional intensity alone. Intensity can excite. You are. But it does not anchor. What anchors is reliability, the knowledge that effort will be met with effort, presence with presence, respect with access. You are. When your behavior is steady, your value becomes legible. There is no confusion about what you expect because you live it. You are. Many people believe that being emotionally expressive will inspire someone to step up. In reality, you are. It often teaches them that emotion will fill the gap where action should be. If tears, patience, and understanding repeatedly replace consequence, you are. There is no incentive to change. Boundaries restore that incentive, not through punishment, but through reality. Consistency also protects you. You are. It prevents the slow erosion of self-respect that comes from repeatedly compromising your standards. Each time you enforce a boundary without anger, you are. Without explanation, without apology, you reinforce your own integrity. You become someone you can rely on, and that self-trust is visible. When boundaries are unclear, you are. People test them. When they're clear, people choose. Some will choose to rise to meet them. Others will choose to leave. Both outcomes are correct. You are. Boundaries are not designed to keep everyone. They are designed to keep the right ones. Men who are capable of commitment do not fear boundaries. They welcome them. You are. Structure simplifies life. It tells them where to invest and how to succeed. Men who resist boundaries are not being challenged. They are being exposed. You are. They are revealing a preference for comfort over responsibility. Consistency over time is what transforms attraction into respect. You are. Anyone can be charming in moments of intensity. Few can be present when it is inconvenient. When your standards do not waver under pressure, you are. You signal that connection with you requires maturity. That signal is unmistakable. Do not confuse emotional generosity with availability without limits. You are. Generosity is chosen. Availability without limits is uncontrolled. The first builds connection. The second invites exploitation. You are. Boundaries make generosity meaningful because they ensure it is not demanded but earned. Stop trying to be understood by those who benefit from misunderstanding you. You are. Stop explaining boundaries to people who ignore behavior. Enforce quietly. Repetition teaches more effectively than speech. Stand steady. You are. Be predictable in your standards, not in your overgiving. Let your actions say what your words no longer need to. Men will respond not to how intensely you feel you are, but to how consistently you live. That is not emotional distance. That is strength. Focused self-direction creates attraction without pursuit or pressure. You are. When a person is moving somewhere meaningful, they stop orbiting other people for validation. Direction replaces need. Purpose replaces performance. And in that shift, you are. Attraction emerges naturally, not because it is demanded, but because it is felt. Most people repel connection by trying too hard to secure it. They monitor responses. You are. Overinterpret silence and adjust themselves to maintain interest. This behavior communicates one thing clearly: uncertainty about one's own path. You are. There is nothing attractive about confusion disguised as effort. Attraction is not pulled toward desperation. It is drawn towards stability. You are. Self-direction organizes your energy. When your days are structured around growth, responsibility, and forward movement, you are. Your attention becomes valuable because it is no longer available on demand. You are not withholding. You are engaged. That engagement signals abundance, not scarcity. You are. People sense when they are optional to your purpose rather than central to your identity, and that changes how they approach you. You are. Pursuit creates pressure because it seeks outcome. It tries to secure reassurance before it is earned. Focused self-direction does the opposite. It removes urgency. You are. It allows connection to unfold without force. When you are grounded in your own life, you do not need to convince anyone of your worth. You are. Your consistency does that quietly. Men in particular respond to trajectory. They notice when someone is building, not waiting. When your life has momentum, you are. Your presence feels additive rather than demanding. You are not asking to be entertained, rescued, or completed. You are. You are inviting someone to walk alongside something already moving. Pressure enters relationships when one person needs the other to regulate their emotions. You are. Focus eliminates that need. When your sense of meaning is internal, interaction becomes lighter, clearer, and more honest. You are not managing perception. You are. You are expressing reality. Focused self-direction also sharpens discernment. You become selective, not out of arrogance, but out of necessity. Time becomes finite. You are. Energy becomes intentional. You no longer confuse attention with interest or intensity with commitment. You observe patterns instead of reacting to moments. You are. There is a calm authority in someone who knows where they are going. They do not announce it. They do not defend it. They act. That calmness is grounding to others. You are. It creates curiosity without manipulation. People lean in because nothing is being forced. Pressure collapses attraction because it demands response. You are. Direction sustains attraction because it invites participation. One chases, the other leads. Leadership in your own life is not dominance. It is clarity. You are. And clarity is rare. When you stop making relationships the center of your world, they become healthier. You are. They are no longer asked to carry the weight of your fulfillment. They become a complement, not a cure. That distinction changes everything. You are. Self-direction also protects you from settling. When your life is aligned with your values, you can afford to walk away from what does not match them. You are. There is no panic in your decisions. There is patience, and patience signals strength. Do not confuse detachment with indifference. Focus people care deeply, you are, but selectively. They invest where there is reciprocity. They do not pursue what requires self-betrayal. Their interest is steady, not frantic. You are. Attraction grows in environments of freedom. When someone feels chosen rather than needed, connection deepens. You are. Focused self-direction creates that freedom by removing pressure from the interaction. There is room to breathe, to choose, to step forward willingly. You are. Stop performing for attention. Build something worth your attention. Let your life speak before you do. Let movement replace messaging. Let consistency replace chasing. You are. When you are oriented toward purpose, attraction becomes a byproduct, not a goal. People respond to that instinctively, not because you pursued them, you are, but because you were already on your way somewhere meaningful. That is how attraction forms without pressure. That is how connection begins without pursuit. You are. Distance reveals truth. People regulate effort to what they value. When space appears, excuses collapse and priorities surface. You are. Effort does not evaporate without reason. It is redistributed toward what matters most. If someone's presence fades the moment attention is no longer guaranteed, you are. That absence is not confusion. It is information. Distance is not the problem. Distance is the instrument that measures reality. You are. Most people fear distance because it threatens the story they want to believe. They mistake constant contact for commitment and emotional intensity for investment. You are. But noise is not depth, and frequency is not loyalty. When you stop initiating, stop reminding, stop carrying the weight of the connection alone, you are. You remove the scaffolding that was holding the illusion upright. What remains is the truth. Effort follows value with ruthless precision. A person will find time, you are, energy and creativity for what they care about. They will overcome inconvenience. They will adjust schedules. They will show up even when it costs them comfort, you are. When that effort disappears, it is not because life suddenly became overwhelming, it is because priorities shifted. Distance simply exposes that shift. You are. Matching distance is not withdrawal driven by bitterness. It is alignment driven by clarity. You are not creating space to provoke pursuit, you are. You are creating space to stop lying to yourself. When you step back, you give the other person full responsibility for their level of engagement, you are. That responsibility reveals character faster than confrontation ever could. People who value you feel distance as a call to action. You are. They do not wait for perfect timing or emotional explanations. They move, they check in, they re-establish connection with intention. You are. Those who do not value you feel relief. The pressure to perform disappears, and so do they. Both reactions are honest. Honesty, though painful, is stabilizing. You are. The mistake many people make is trying to rescue effort with understanding. They offer patience where accountability is needed. You are. They provide reassurance where commitment is absent. Over time, this generosity turns into self-erasure. Distance interrupts that pattern. You are. It stops you from overfunctioning in a dynamic that was never mutual. Distance also confronts your own habits. You are. It shows you how often you chase certainty instead of self-respect. It reveals where you equate being needed with being valued. This confrontation is uncomfortable, but it is necessary. Growth begins where fantasy ends. When distance enters a relationship, structure replaces chaos, silence replaces noise. You are. Observation replaces assumption. You begin to see patterns instead of isolated moments. You notice who initiates, who follows through. You are. Who disappears when effort is required. Distance turns behavior into data. Effort that only exists when you are available is not effort. It is convenience. You are. Real effort persists without prompting. It does not require reminders or emotional labor to sustain it. You are. Distance exposes whether connection is chosen or merely enjoyed when easy. Do not confuse distance with punishment. Punishment is reactive. Distance is neutral. You are. It simply allows reality to operate without interference. You are not withholding love. You are withholding distortion. You are allowing people to show you who they are without your constant input. Those who are serious will not be threatened by distance. They will respect it. They understand that space is where intention proves itself. Those who rely on access without responsibility will resist it. That resistance is the answer. Clarity is kinder than prolonged confusion. Distance accelerates clarity. It saves time. It saves energy. It prevents you from investing deeply in what was never invested in you. Stand still when distance appears. Do not rush to fill it. Do not explain it away. Let effort, or the lack of it, speak. People always regulate effort to what they value. Distance merely removes the disguise. When the truth is finally visible, accept it without bargaining. Use it to move forward with strength rather than regret. Because once you see where you stand, you are free to choose what comes next. With dignity, focus, and self-respect. Matching energy is not manipulation. It is self-respect in action. Manipulation seeks to bend reality to secure control. Self-respect seeks to align behavior with truth. When you match what is given instead of compensating for what is missing, you are not playing a game. You are ending one. You are choosing honesty over performance and stability over anxiety. Most people are taught that love requires effort without limit. They confuse devotion with overextension and patience with self-abandonment. But effort without reciprocity does not build connection. It builds resentment. Matching energy interrupts that pattern. It says, without accusation or drama, I will meet you where you meet me. That statement restores balance. Manipulation depends on hidden motives and emotional pressure. Matching energy is transparent. There is no demand, no threat, no ultimatum. You simply adjust your output to match reality. If communication slows, you slow. If effort increases, you respond. This is not control, it is calibration. You are tuning yourself to what is actually happening rather than what you hope might happen. People who benefit from your overgiving will often label your restraint as strategy. That accusation reveals more about their expectations than your intentions. When you stop providing emotional labor for free, those who relied on it must confront their own lack of investment. Accountability feels uncomfortable. So it gets misnamed as manipulation. Do not accept that distortion. Self-respect requires consistency. You cannot say you value yourself while repeatedly tolerating imbalance. Each time you give more than you receive, you teach others how to treat you. And you teach yourself that your needs are optional. Matching energy reverses that lesson. It reestablishes internal order. Your actions and values come back into alignment. Matching energy does not mean mirroring moodiness or withdrawal. It means matching investment. You remain warm, but not available without limits. You remain open, but not exposed. There is a difference between kindness and accessibility without standards. One builds connection, the other invites exploitation. Men especially respond to consequence rather than explanation, not punishment, consequence. When energy is no longer guaranteed, effort becomes intentional. When access must be earned through consistency, presence gains weight. This shift is not about making someone chase. It is about discovering whether they are willing to show up without being pushed. Healthy individuals do not feel manipulated by your self-respect. They feel clarity. Boundaries simplify interaction. They remove guesswork. When effort is met with effort, attraction stabilizes into respect. Those who cannot meet you at that level will fade. Let them. You are not losing connection. You are losing imbalance. Matching energy also protects your emotional health. It prevents you from over-investing before trust is established. It keeps you from building attachment on potential rather than behavior. You stop confusing intensity with intimacy. You start valuing consistency over excitement. There is strength in restraint. Strength does not announce itself. It does not explain itself into exhaustion. It acts and then it waits. Matching energy is that strength expressed quietly. You are not reacting. You are responding. You are not chasing. You are observing. When you stop over-functioning, the dynamic reorganizes itself. Either the other person steps up or the connection dissolves. Both outcomes serve you. Growth requires discernment. And discernment requires data. Matching energy provides that data without conflict. Do not fear being misunderstood by those who lose access to your overachieving. Fear misunderstanding yourself by continuing to betray your standards. Self-respect is not loud. It is consistent. It shows up the same way, even when it risks loss. Matching energy is not emotional distance. It is emotional accuracy. It is the refusal to inflate connection with effort that is not returned. When you do this, you are no longer trying to secure interest. You are allowing truth to emerge. Stand grounded. Offer what is offered. Withdraw what is not met. Let balance decide. You are. That is not manipulation. That is self-respect in motion. Men respond to boundaries more than words, consistency more than emotion. Words can persuade for a moment. You are. Emotion can move a moment, but boundaries shape behavior over time. When structure is present, effort organizes itself. When structure is absent, you are. Confusion fills the space. This is not a criticism of emotion. It is an acknowledgement that emotion without direction dissolves into noise. You are. Many people believe that if they explain themselves clearly enough, understanding will turn into commitment. They rehearse conversations, justify needs, you are, and pour feeling into language, hoping it will inspire change. But explanation rarely creates respect. You are. Respect is created when standards are enforced calmly and repeatedly. A boundary lived is more powerful than a boundary spoken. A boundary is not aggression. You are. It is not withdrawal. It is self-governance. It communicates how access to you works. When a man encounters a clear boundary, he no longer has to guess. You are. He sees what is required and decides whether he is willing to meet it. That decision reveals character faster than emotional discussion ever could. You are. Men are conditioned by experience to respond to consequence rather than sentiment. In work, in competition, in responsibility, outcomes matter more than intentions. You are. The same principle applies in relationships. When behavior meets no consequence, it continues. When it meets consistent structure, it adjusts or it leaves. You are. Both outcomes are honest. Emotion without consistency creates instability. One day you tolerate something, the next day you resent it. One moment you say it is fine, you are. The next you express hurt. This unpredictability does not deepen attraction, it erodes trust. Consistency, on the other hand, creates safety. You are. It shows that your standards are not dependent on mood, fear, or hope. Men do not anchor themselves to intensity, they anchor themselves to reliability. You are. Anyone can be emotionally expressive in moments of passion. Few can be present when effort is required without applause. You are. Consistent behavior communicates value because it is costly. It requires discipline, not impulse. When boundaries are weak, emotional labor fills the gap. You soothe, you are. Explain and accommodate in hopes of being understood. Over time, this creates exhaustion and quiet resentment. Boundaries remove the need for constant explanation. You are. They allow behavior to speak. And behavior is a language men understand fluently. Healthy men are not threatened by boundaries. They are oriented by them. You are. Structure clarifies expectations and simplifies decision-making. A man who wants to invest does not ask for fewer boundaries. He asks how to meet them. You are. A man who resists boundaries is not being challenged. He is being exposed. Consistency also protects you. Each time you uphold a boundary without anger or apology, you are. You reinforce your own self-respect. You become predictable in the right way. Others learn that your standards do not fluctuate based on how much attention you receive. You are. That predictability is grounding. Do not confuse emotional availability with unlimited access. Availability without limits invites disregard. You are. Boundaries make availability meaningful because they ensure it is offered by choice, not demanded by habit. When access is earned through respect, connection deepens. You are. Stop trying to be understood by those who benefit from misunderstanding you. Words are easily ignored. Patterns are not. When your actions remain steady, you are. Even in the face of pressure, your values become unmistakable. Men respond when they know the rules of engagement. Boundaries define those rules. You are. Consistency enforces them. Emotion alone cannot do that work. Emotion may express desire, but boundaries determine direction. Stand firm without hostility. You are. Enforce without drama. Repeat without resentment. Let your behavior carry the message your words no longer need to explain. That is not emotional distance. You are. That is maturity. Focused self-direction creates attraction without pursuit or pressure. When a person is oriented toward a meaningful aim, you are. Their energy stops scattering in search of approval. Direction replaces need and stability replaces urgency. Attraction emerges not because it is demanded, you are, but because it is felt in the presence of someone who knows where they are going. Most people try to secure connection by monitoring reactions. They chase responses, you are, analyze silence, and adjust themselves to remain interesting. This behavior communicates uncertainty, you are. It tells the other person that attention is the goal rather than the byproduct. Focused self-direction reverses that message. When your life has momentum, You are. Attention becomes optional, not essential. Pressure enters relationships when one person needs the other to regulate their sense of worth. You are. Pursuit is often an attempt to stabilize anxiety. Focus eliminates that need. When your days are structured around growth, responsibility, and forward motion, you are. Your emotional center remains internal. Interaction becomes lighter because nothing essential is at stake. Men respond instinctively to trajectory. You are. They notice when someone is building instead of waiting. Movement signals value. A person with direction does not require rescue, entertainment, you are, or constant reassurance. They invite participation without demanding it. That invitation feels clean, not heavy. Self-direction also removes performance. You are. You stop trying to appear desirable and start being consistent. Consistency is attractive because it is rare. Anyone can create intensity for short periods. You are. Few can sustain purpose over time. Purpose creates gravity. When you are focused, you do not need to pursue. Pursuit implies lack. You are. It suggests that connection must be secured before it disappears. Direction implies abundance. You are. It communicates that your life continues forward, whether or not someone chooses to join it. That independence is calming, not threatening. You are. Pressure collapses attraction because it seeks outcome before alignment. It asks for reassurance before trust is built. Focus allows alignment to develop naturally. You are. There is room to observe, choose, and step forward freely. Freedom is where genuine attraction grows. Focused self-direction sharpens discernment. You are. You become selective because your time matters. You stop confusing attention with interest and intensity with commitment. You look for patterns, not promises. You are. This selectivity raises your standards without requiring explanation. There is a quiet authority in someone who is self-directed. They do not announce their purpose. You are. They live it. Their presence feels grounded because it is not trying to extract anything. You are. People are drawn to that steadiness because it offers clarity in a chaotic world. When relationships are no longer the center of your life, they become healthier. You are. They are no longer asked to provide identity or meaning. They become complementary instead of compensatory. You are. This shift removes pressure from the connection and allows intimacy to develop without force. Do not mistake detachment for indifference. Focused people care deeply. You are. But they do not chase. Their interest is steady, not frantic. They invest where effort is mutual and walk away where it is not. That discernment is felt immediately. You are. Attraction thrives in environments where choice is real. When someone feels chosen rather than needed, respect grows. You are. Focused self-direction creates that environment by ensuring that connection is a decision, not a requirement. Stop performing for validation. You are. Build a life that commands your attention. Let your movements speak before your words do. Let consistency replace chasing. When you are aligned with purpose, you are. Attraction becomes a side effect, not a strategy. People respond to that alignment instinctively, not because you pursued them, you are, but because you were already moving forward. That is how attraction forms without pressure.